Dear learners, today we will discuss Module 3 Theoretical Perspective to Understand Health. So, what is postmodern perspective on health? Today we are going to understand the postmodern perspective on health. Our notion of health has been substantially impacted by the postmodern perspective, among other areas of our existence. The postmodern perspective challenges conventional ideas of health by emphasizing subjectivity, cultural variety, and the interdependence of diverse social elements, departing from modernist viewpoints that prioritize objectivity, universal truths, and grand narratives. The idea of universal definitions of the body and health is rejected by postmodernism, as is the notion of that health can be quantified or standardized in an objective manner. Instead, it acknowledges that health is a subjective experience that is influenced by a variety of social, cultural, and personal factors. According to postmodern theories, the concept of health is shaped by cultural context, and each person's experience of well-being is distinct and placed within their own specific social and historical context. Subjectivity and personal narratives are given a lot of weight in the postmodern approach when it comes to understanding the health. It acknowledges that each person develop their own conception of health based on their unique experiences, convictions, and values. This viewpoint respects the various ways that people see and interpret their health, and it sees the relevance of personal narratives in reflecting the complexity of healthcare experiences. The medicalization of society, the propensity to see human issues and experiences largely through a medical lens, is a topic that postmodern critically investigates. Medicalization frequently results in the exclusion of other social, cultural, and psychological variables, impacting health in favor of biological treatments as the dominant ones in the healthcare. The postmodern view challenges the sole focus on biological variables and promotes a broader understanding of health that includes social determinants, cultural practices, and psychological components. According to postmodernism, the concept of health is socially constructed and is influenced by power relationships, social conventions, and cultural values. It emphasizes how social structure, including those based on gender, race, class, and other types of social inequality, have an impact on health experiences and results. As an illustration, the postmodern approach emphasizes how socio-economic inequalities, discrimination, and access to resources affect the health outcomes, understanding that maintaining good health is not just an individual but also a group responsibility. So, what is this postmodern theory? The theories of both post-structuralism and postmodernism are crucial to our understanding of the relationship between health, culture, and society. They offer a critique to modernism and, in relation to health, show how the micropolitics of power relate to medical knowledge and medical power. They offer a critique to modernism and, in relation to health, show how the micropolitics of power relate to medical knowledge and medical power. These two approaches also help to explain the resistance to techniques of power of a postmodern era. Modernity is associated with the age of enlightenment in the Western societies, which began around 18th century. It involved social, economic, and political upheaval, with increasing secularization of societies and the growing dominance of philosophical and scientific rationalism. The basic assumption of modernity are the human order is essentially governed by general principles which can be elucidated by scientific analysis. Scientific knowledge was based on an empiricist epistemology and was believed to be the instrument by which true knowledge could be found. Modernism is associated with humanism, which takes the human experience as the starting point for man's knowledge of himself. The aim of social sciences was thus to liberate humanity from prejudice and ignorance using scientific knowledge. So, advent of postmodern theory. How postmodern theory began? So, postmodern theory was seen to have born from within the democratic left of French politics in the 1960s. The postmodernists claim that fundamental socio-historic change cannot be adequately explained by the modern theories. Thus, they call for new categories, modes of thought, and politics to overcome the deficiencies of modern discourse and practices. Thus, they call for a new categories, modes of thought, and politics to overcome the deficiencies of modern discourse and practices. Postmodernists favor social analysis which incorporates local, contextualized strategies that have a more practical or more moral intent. Local narratives are preferred in place of grand narratives and theories. So now let's discuss what is Foucault's theory in the context of postmodernism. Foucault's theory of governmentality could be considered as an example of how post-structural and post-modernist ideas can help in understanding the relationship between health, culture, and society. Governmentality describes the range of mechanisms that allow different groups and discourses to regulate, construct, and constitute individuals, group, and society. It is drawn from discourse theory which focuses on how meaning is socially constructed semiotically. Foucault found two distinct trends emerging in the history of medical practice. Medicine of species, that is the classification, diagnosis, and the treatment of disease, and medicine of social spaces, that is the prevention of disease. The former defined the human body as an object of study subject to medical intervention and control, while the latter made the public's health subject to medical and civil regulation. The surveillance of human sexuality by the state, church, and medicine subjected the most intimate bodily activities to institutional discourse and monitoring. Thus, bodies themselves came under the jurisdiction of experts on the behalf of the society. There is therefore a clear distinction between modernist and postmodernist concepts of the body. Modernist thought views as body as independent of various discourses which represent it, whereas postmodernist thought views the bodies as discursively produced. In the beginning of the birth of the clinic, Foucault maintains that the exact superposition of the body of disease and the body of the sick man is no more than a historical, temporary datum. To demonstrate this idea, he documents the development of a new institutional space, the clinic, and its associated new forms of medical perception. During the 18th century, diseases were conceived to be homologous according to similarities in their clinical history. However, with the arrival of modernity, the human body became penetrated by techniques of examination which spatially located disease within particular sites of the body. The shift was not driven by progress in the positivist sense. Rather, for Foucault, it illustrated the articulation of medical discursive forms with a new social specialization of disease. The pre-modern medicine of diseases species was mapped onto a two-dimensional space and its natural location was within the family. However, the emergent gaze was born by the alliance of medicine and the state, and the situation of medical practice within the institutional space of the clinic. Foucault writes, medicine must no longer be confined to a body of techniques for curing ills and of knowledge that they require. It will embrace a knowledge of healthy man, that is, a study of non-sick man and a definition of the model man. This anti-positivist strategy establishes truth, knowledge, and power as mutually constitutive, a central theme within Foucault's writing. Consequently, the objective body is constructed through evaluative assignments which demarcate normality from abnormality. This truth of the body is of key theoretical significance, for it is through the incorporation or embodiment of power that it is possible to access the bodies of individuals, their acts, attitudes, and modes of everyday behavior. Such a form of power is the characteristic of modernity. So now let's talk about Foucault's idea of knowledge and power. Foucault believed that modern societies regulate and discipline their members by their expert knowledge, such as medicine, education, law, social work, etc. The power knowledge of the new disciplines was mediated through disciplinary mechanism which stipulated norms for human behavior. In terms of medical sphere, Foucault suggested that the basis for medical dominance lay in the knowledge claims of the medical profession about the body, health and illness. The new discipline were seen as having insights into problems, knowledge and techniques, and as a consequence were given license to diagnose, treat and thereby normalize the population. Medical discourse, however, have come under increasing criticism for being uncaring, stigmatized and disempowering. Despite the claims to objective scientific reasoning, this discourse have been shown not to be value-free but often prejudiced and socially constructed. A postmodern perspective questions the knowledge claim of the new disciplines on how they claim authenticity, authority, and how is it that people are willing to accept their knowledge of the character of health and illness. According to Foucault, sociological discourse is implicated in discipline and regulation, the discipline of the gaze through examination, hierarchical observation and regulation. Sociology itself therefore is implicated in the fabrication of discourse which make health, illness and social problems culturally defined phenomena, despite the fact that it claims to be superior to biomedical discourse or lay prejudice. Ideas from postmodernism can help to analyze how sociology creates subjectivity through its discourse and supports the need for reflexivity in understanding the problems of representation in health, illness and social problems which modernist sociology articulates. Our next concept is biopolitics or biopower, which was given by Foucault. One of the fundamental concepts in Foucault's writing on power and governments is the idea of biopower. The term biopower describes the ways in which individual and communities, bodies and lives are manipulated by those in positions of authority in the contemporary cultures. It has a tight connection to the rise of disciplinary power and population management through various methods and technologies. In 18th and 19th century, biopower, a type of power that was centered on the regulation and control of life itself, according to Foucault, first appeared. The sovereign's ability to end life, that is, the power of death, was relocated from the center of authority to the administration and enhancement of life. The management of the entire population, as well as the health, happiness, and reproduction, are all priorities for biopower. Anatomopolitics and biopolitics are two main mechanisms of biopower identified by Foucault. Anatomopolitics focuses on disciplining and regulating individual bodies through techniques like surveillance, examination, and normalization. It deals with the individual's body. Institutions like hospitals, jails, schools, and military camps are used to carry out its operations. The population as a whole is the main subject of biopolitics. Populations are regulated and controlled through tools like statistics, birth control laws, eugenics, and public health initiatives. The goal of biopolitics is to control and regulate the population's death, birth, and health rates. Biopower employs a variety of methods and tools, including medical and psychiatric expertise, security measures, administrative tools, and social institutions. Together, these strategies shape and govern people and population through affecting their actions and desires. According to Foucault, biopower is both repressive and generative. Subjectivities, standards, and ways of living are produced and shaped by it. Biopower uses normalization strategies in which some bodily functions, lifestyles, and behaviors are accepted as normal while others are stigmatized or pathologized. It establishes criteria and expectation that people and groups are supposed to follow, so defining their identities and subjectivities. The idea of biopower developed by Foucault has an impact on critical theory, sociology, political science, and other fields. It offers a paradigm for examining power dynamics and how they function in contemporary cultures, especially in regards to people's bodies, health, and populations. In short, biopolitics can be understood as a political rationality which takes the administration of life and population as its subject to ensure, sustain, and multiply life, to put life in order. Biopower thus names the way in which biopolitics is put to work in society and involves what Foucault describes as a very profound transformation of the mechanisms of power of the Western classical age. The idea of medical gaze in a postmodern era. So now we will discuss about the concept medical gaze, which was given by Foucault. The phrase medical gaze refers to the frequently dehumanizing process by which medical personnel isolate the body from the person, and was first used by French philosopher and critic Foucault in his 1963 book The Birth of Clinic. In an effort to characterize the development of a body related realm of knowledge, Foucault uses this phrase. He claimed that the material and intellectual foundation that allowed for the possibility of conducting a body analysis were laced with power interests. He claimed that as soon as the individual human body entered the field of knowledge, it also entered the field of power and became a potential object of manipulation. Foucault asserts that the French and American revolutions, which gave rise to modernity, also produced a meta-narrative of scientific discourse that portrayed scientists and particularly physicians as wise men and women who would eventually end all human suffering by eradicating diseases. In a way, doctors supplanted the increasingly despised medical clergy in the eyes of 19th century moderns. Instead of saving souls, medical practitioners preserved the body. According to Foucault, this myth was a part of a larger discourse of humanist and Enlightenment schools of thought, which held the view that a person is made up of their physical and intellectual components. The biological reductionist theory developed as a potent instrument for new ages. According to Foucault, a doctor always approaches a patient with a medical gaze. Through talk, observation, and physical examination, the doctor will be examining the patient's body in this situation. Lab and imaging tests are also a part of contemporary medical gaze practices. The doctor gathers patients' medical history in an effort to ascertain the precise nature of their condition before making a diagnosis based on knowledge he has accumulated over the course of his extensive training and experience. Medical gaze is the process of observing bodily symptoms and using knowledge to provide a precise diagnosis. Even now, many still debate about the concept of medical gaze. From the 17th to the late 20th century, in the history of modern medicine, a disease manifests itself to a viewer through a system of signs and symptoms, through guidelines that have a certain semantic value and morphological weight. According to Foucault, the symptoms and the indications created a new syntax, a language that did not owe its truth to speech, but the gaze alone, a syntax that needed the clinic's unique institutional setting in order to be expressed. The foundation of the birth of the clinic hinged on two innovations: the emergence of the new object, the disease revealed through a structure, a system of indicators easily available to that gaze, and the new subject, and the subject of the gaze. So now we are going to discuss postmodernist notion of medicine. The French philosopher and social theorist Michel Foucault made substantial contributions to the study of power and how it affects many institutions, including medicine. Although Foucault did not restrict his work to the study of medicine, his writings provide important insights into connections between knowledge, power, and practice of medicine. The book, The Birth of Clinic, and his later work, The History of Sexuality, are two main sources of Foucault's examination of medicine. In these books, Foucault explores the historical development of medical knowledge and practices, emphasizes how medicine is now entirely objective or impartial but is instead inextricably entwined with power relations. The connection between medicine and disciplinary power is another topic that Foucault examines. He contends that the present system of disciplinary authority, which attempts to control and regulate people's bodies and behaviors, has been greatly influenced by medicine. Hospitals and clinics as well as other medical facilities serve as centers for monitoring and normalization, where people are put through a variety of tests, procedures and other interventions in an effort to shape them into healthy and productive subjects. Foucault also emphasizes the evolution of medical knowledge and methods over time. He contends that medical knowledge is a byproduct of certain historical, social, and cultural settings rather than an immutable fact. As power dynamics and societal standards have changed over time, so have the ways that diseases are categorized, treatments are prescribed, and bodies are understood. The idea that medicine is a fully altruistic and objective profession is called into question by Foucault's examination of the field. Instead, he challenges us to think critically about the power relationships that exist in medical setting and how medicine affects how power is used in the society. Foucault's work challenges us to question and confront the predominant beliefs and practices in the field of medicine by throwing light on the historical and social formation of medical knowledge. So now let's sum up what we have learned. Firstly, we learned about the theory of postmodernism. Then we understand how postmodernism looks at the health aspect of society. Thirdly, we discuss about the concepts given by Foucault like biopolitics, biopower and medical gaze. And lastly, we ended the discussion by having looked at the idea of medicine from a postmodernist lens. Thank you, learners.